Hello friends, welcome to another session for software engineering and designing concepts. In today's session, we will first learn about the difference between a program and a software product. We will also have a discussion related to computer systems engineering, and finally we will learn about the evolution of various design methods. So let's get started. To begin with, the difference between programs and software products can be classified into 6 separate points. The first point being the program is generally smaller in size as compared to a software product. We can also call the software products as a superset of the program, where the author himself is generally the sole user or it is developed only for a single user. However, in software products, a large number of users are involved in order to use the product. It is generally developed by a single person. However, it requires a team of developers to develop a software product. Programs generally lacks proper user interface because the developer generally himself is the user, or since there is only one user, he can easily be trained into using that interface. However, in software product, it is mandatory that the user interface has to be well designed and user friendly. Programs lack proper documentation. However, software products comes with well documented user manuals so that there is no point at which the user might get confused. Programs are generally dependent on ad hoc development, where the development basically is intuition driven. However, software products involves systematic development which involves defined methodologies and techniques. So, if we are talking about software projects, it can be categorized into software products which could be developed or which are generally developed, and the second software project being outsourced projects, where the various organizations maintains a set of code or maintains the software product which has been developed by some other organization. So Indian companies, they generally have focus on these outsourced projects where they have to maintain those projects rather than developing it from the scratch. So moving ahead to computer systems engineering, generally computer systems engineering defines or represents software engineering, and many products require development of the software as well as specific hardware to run it. For example, we can take the coffee vending machine, which needs both the hardware as well as the software to make it a smooth process, or a mobile communication product, etc. So generally, a high level program is such a problem. A high level problem is such a problem where deciding which tasks are to be solved by the hardware or which tasks are are to be solved by the software is categorized. Often both the hardware and the software are developed together because they have to be in sync as to which part of the hardware should be working with which part of the software and vice versa. Hardware, generally in order to develop hardware, the hardware simulators are used. And finally, integration of hardware and software is done with the final systems testing. So all these phases together, they will comprise of the computer systems engineering. Initially defining the, the level of the problem, whether it is a high level problem or a middle level problem or a low level problem. After that, the development of the hardware and software. Finally, the hardware and software needs to get integrated, and then the system testing is done. In order to represent this in a diagrammatic manner, It initially starts with the feasibility study. In this phase, whether the project or the problem at hand could be solved or not is studied properly. Some of the projects might not be solved, or some of the problems might not be solved with the existing infrastructure that is available. So those projects fail at the feasibility study itself. However, for those projects where the infrastructure and other such components are sufficient in order to execute, moves to the next phase, which is known as requirements analysis and specification. This is an extremely important phase from the computer systems engineering point of view, because in this phase, what hardware or what software do we require in order to develop the problem in hand, or in order to develop the project in hand, is identified. After that, it moves to the hardware and software partitioning phase, where hardware development and software development takes place parallelly in sync with each other. After this phase is completed, the integration and testing phase is done, after which the engineering process is completed and the final product is delivered. If we talk about the history behind software engineering, that is how software engineering emerged, we have to go back to the early computer programming, which started in 1950s. The programs then were being written in assembly language and were limited to about just a few hundreds of lines of assembly code. And every programmer, they had their own style of writing the programs. Generally, we call that as exploratory programming or intuition based programming. That is, whatever comes to our mind, we just start converting them into a program related to the problem. High level languages were generally Fortran, Algol, COBOL, and they were introduced in early 60s, that is early 1960. However, they reduced the software development efforts greatly, because with the introduction of such languages, it was easier for the machines to be trained to solve our problems as compared to the assembly language which was there. So software development style, although was introduced with high level languages, still it was highly exploratory, and typical program sizes were limited to a few thousand lines of the source code. However, the size and complexity of these programs increased further, and exploratory programming style proved to be insufficient in order to solve those problems. So after all this, the programmers found that it is very difficult to write cost-effective and correct programs with the existing high-level languages that were already in place. So in order to cope up with this sort of problems, which involve difficulty in understandability and maintenance, they defined, or the experienced programmers advised to pay particular attention to the design of the program's control structure. So this was very important from the point of view of designing a particular program in order to make it understandable and maintainable. So a program's control structure generally indicated the sequence in which the program's instructions are executed. A program randomly cannot be made to execute its functions or its modules. There has to be a particular sequence in which the program needs to be executed. So the control structure was used in order to define. So when this thought process came into place, it was known as control flow based design and was introduced in the late 1960s itself. To help design programs having a good control structure, the flow charting technique was developed. So flow charting technique or flow charts, where it forms the basis of any programming language execution or the prerequisite to form a program for a given problem. To help design programs having good control structure, this flow charting technique was developed. So using this flow charting technique, one can represent and design a program's control structure, and usually one understands a program by mentally simulating the program's execution sequence. However, if it has a messy flowchart representation, it would be difficult to understand and debug. It was found that goto statements make control structure of a program messy and they alter the flow of the control arbitrarily. So there was a need to restrict the use of goto statements. So this is just an example that I am giving for the goto statement. And many programs have extensively used assembly languages, and there were various instructions in those assembly language. So jump instructions were there, which were frequently used for the program branching in assembly language, and programmers considered the use of goto statements inevitable as compared to those jump instructions for assembly language. At that time, Dijkstra published his article Goto Statement Considered Harmful in 1969, and many programmers were unhappy to read his article. And in order to counter that, they published various counter articles which highlighted the advantages and inevitability of the goto statements. But until late 1960s, when 1960 was just ending, so they conclusively proved that only 3 programming constructs are sufficient to express any programming logic. The first construct being sequence, selection, the second being selection, and the third one being iteration. So everyone accepted that it is possible to solve any programming problem without the use of goto statements if the sequence, selection, and iteration statements or instructions were taken care of. This formed the basis of structured programming methodology. So a program is generally called structured when it uses only 3 different constructs. As I already mentioned, sequence, for example, A equal to 0, B equal to 5. Selection, which involves if statements, like if C equal to true, then P is equal to 5, else Q is equal to 6. And the third one being iteration, which has statements like loops, generally for loop, while, etc. So unstructured control flows were generally avoided, and it consisted of a neat set of modules which uses single entry and single exit program constructs. These structured programs were easier to read and understand and easier to maintain, and it required less effort for development. However, there were violations to these features which were permitted, and due to practical consideration such as premature loop exit to support the exception handling. There are always considerations for everything. There are always exceptions. So in structured programs also this was the exception. So when research was conducted, it used to show that programmers commit less number of errors while using structured if then else and do while statements, and as compared to test and branch constructs. Finally, in early 1970, data structure oriented design came into existence, and it was more important by early 70s to pay more attention to the design of the data structures of the program than to pay attention to design of its control structure. So techniques which emphasize designing the data structure and deriving program structure from it basically used to form the data structure oriented design techniques. For example, JSP. So basically it is Jackson's structured programming methodology and was developed by 1970s, and it was one of the first data structure oriented design technique that was there. However, slowly this JSP methodology, where a program's data structures were first designed using notations for sequence selection and iteration, and was used to derive the program structure, data structure oriented design was replaced with data flow oriented design, where the data flow oriented techniques used to represent the data items which would be fed into a system and is identified, and what type of processes were required on the data items to produce the required outputs. All these things were determined in this particular technique. It also identifies different processing stations. We also call them functions in a system, and the different types of data which flows between the different functions. Basically, it is a generic technique and can be used to model the working of any system. So soon after this data flow oriented design, let's take the example first, and after that we will slowly move ahead with object oriented design. So this is a typical example of your data flow model of a car assembly unit. So initially there are processing stations, which is fit engine, fit doors, fit wheels, and the data items are being fed into the system or fed into the processing stations from the engine store, the chassis store, door store, wheel store. And finally, after all the processing is done, the assembled car is painted and tested in another processing station, and finally the car is delivered. So in this diagram we can see which are the processing stations or which are the functions that is capable of executing the entire process, and from which particular stores what type of data is flowing into the system. So after this data flow oriented structured design was a success, slowly in 1980s object oriented design technique was introduced. Now when we are talking about object oriented design or object oriented technique, it essentially involves definitional representation of natural objects such as employees, payroll register, etc. occurring in a problem, and they are identified initially, after which the relationship between these objects are identified as to whether they are dependent on each other or they are completely a composition of it, or they are simply referring to it, or they have inherited properties from it. So all these relationships are identified, and essentially each object has data hiding properties associated with it. Now, object oriented techniques were relatively easier and had a wide acceptance among the programmers community because of its simplicity, reuse possibilities, lower development time and cost. The code used to be robust and the maintainability was easier. So, when we talk about current scenario basically deals with these this technique more often while development of various projects or products, as the reusability possibilities are high and they are simple to implement. So looking at the evolution of design techniques, initially it was an ad hoc development where it was generally based on intuition, or simply you can call it as the programmer's idea. Finally, it moved to a better version which was known as control flow based version, where the structure of execution was identified. After that, it moved towards data structure based design, where the structure along with the sequence as well as the different iterations involved, and the selection was also a primary component. Slowly it moved ahead with data flow based design technique, where the data and the relationship among the various processing stations or functions was established. Finally it moved ahead with the object oriented concept, where the data as well as the processing stations or function could work with real life objects or natural objects. This technology is still evolving, however, the basis remains the combination of all the design techniques that we have learned till now, and object oriented design technique is the most widely accepted technique till date. So thank you. I hope you had a good learning session. Thank you.